Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Managing Your Small Business Through the Pandemic webinar, number 50, since we started doing these back on March 17th of 2020. So good afternoon. My name is Kelly Bearden. I'm your host, and I will be moderating today's webinar. Got some great guests and some exciting new programs, local programs to help small businesses through. Got a lot of new information, so looking forward to it today. So off we go. Just a quick note, as most of you know that have been here before, that we are part of the Central California region of the Small Business Development Center program, a program in all 50 states and 8 territories out of the Central California region. We serve all of Kern County, and since of course it's not big enough, we serve Inyo and Mono counties as well. Quite a wide span, larger than 8 statewide programs in the national SBDC network geographically, and we do it out of our downtown Bakersfield office. If you need any assistance, any consulting, any variety of issues to be advised on, or any other things that come up out of today's meeting, give us a call, or best, go to our website and sign up for services or contact your consultant if you're already working with us. If you're located throughout the Central California region, in Clovis, Merced, Modesto, Salinas, or San Luis Obispo, you can contact their local centers. So we are continuing operating out of the School of Business and Public Administration, CSUB. Got to thank all of our various sponsors for their participation in helping us make this possible. So thank you to them. And let's talk about what's new today. So what is new today, February 24th? Well, starting to see some changes in the tiers. And, you know, I'm a big believer in cash flow is better than a lot of the programs we've talked about over the last 50 weeks. And I want to get opened and I want to see you guys open, and let's get opened. So how close are we getting to that? We'll look at the tiers and what's going on not only in Kern County, but statewide with the tier system, and we're pushing toward that red tier. We'll look a little bit at testing. I think you hear enough about vaccines, but maybe share a little bit of information there. There was a lot of news on PPP this week. Most of that news was coming from, of course, you know, the new guidance that we received out of the White House, through the White House and out of SBA, that we'll go over. But we're also going to look at some of the PPP numbers and some of the trends that are happening within those numbers. Shuttered venues, we still do not have an open program there. We looked at the new FAQs quickly last week, didn't have much time to go over them. Let's go over a couple of those today in hoping that we have this program opened and opened soon. California is coming out with a stimulus detail program, and those were announced yesterday. And whereas we'll just cover that briefly maybe right now, we'll get into that a little bit more next week. And one of the provisions is going to be additional funding for the California Relief Grant. We'll get into that. There was also a direct payment for individuals that are termed lower income by the state, and a variety of other programs that we will get ready and talk about a little bit more detail next week. We're going to be looking into very little today, since we discussed it in pretty good detail last week. A lot of the new programs for the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Package, as it's called. So that thing is still kind of on the rails. It's still going down the tracks toward its process. If you recall last week, we talked a lot about the program for the direct grant program for restaurants and some of the other things that, if they continue on a path, look like that they could be new for small businesses in those particular areas, in those industries. A little bit more on the 1.9 trillion is still that discussion on the minimum wage, which really doesn't affect us in California too much, since we've already been kind of stretching toward that $15 minimum wage, but obviously a big deal around the rest of the country, where the federal minimum rate is still $7.25. So we'll keep that kind of in the rear view today, but keep that in mind for future weeks. Got a couple of great guests today that are going to be discussing an exciting new program. One of them starts today, the other in the middle of March. City of Bakersfield Restart Grant Program. So lot to talk about as far as federal, a little bit on the state, and then we hit the local. And we're going to get all your questions at the end today, and also get into our poll question for the day. So when I looked at this poll question that I'm going to be asking, what I did was I looked at some of the guidance that we're going to go over, and this poll question came to mind. And so what I'm going to ask is two questions. The first one is two parts, question 1 and question 2. And it is for those of you who have already applied in 2021 for a PPP. So if you have applied, and we're starting to see pretty good activity in that area for those that have applied or were approved and possibly funded. But we want to know from you that are out there and who have applied for PPP for this year is how many days it's going to take you, or it took you, to get approval. So we're looking at the number of days, and also for approval. And then after you were approved, how many days did it take, or do you anticipate it take, to get funded? Okay. A little bit of a windbag poll from me this week, but let's launch it and let's tackle this thing and find out what you're seeing out there as far as how long it is taking to actually get approval. Number one, the first question is, if you've applied for a PPP, how many days did it take to get approval? 1 to 5 days, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, over 15, or I did not get approval. So, and then if you can go down, and question 2 of this is, I was approved for PPP in 2021. How many days did it take to get funded? Now, these questions will make a little bit of sense potentially in just a little bit when we go through some of the guidance bit. So we've got a healthy number of you that have voted. We're up to almost 30% of you that are in attendance today have already applied for a PPP. Second round, it could be the second helping or the first dose. So a couple of windbag questions. How long did it take to get approval? Number of days. How long did it take to get funded? Fantastic. Okay, well, we've got a nice size sample. Thank you very much for participating. Let's end the poll, and we're going to share it with everybody right here. And the results are about 32% of you took over 15 days to get notified that your PPP loan was approved. 11 to 15 days was 15%, 6 to 10, 24%. And boy, some of you rapidly. So all kind of across the board there. Some of what I was hearing was it was taking longer, and maybe with some of the information we're going to hit on PPP today, that made sense. So also the second part of that was, how many days did it take to get funded? And the vast majority, 6 to 10 of you, about 1/3 of you took 6 to 10 days. Okay, great. Thank you for the information. Very valuable information to know about how long it's taking for approval, how long it's taking to get funded for those of us that are still out there trying to get to that state of mind. Okay. The next one is also a quicker poll, and it's a lot simpler. I'm just going to launch it right here, and it's about the California Relief Grant. And just a quick things. If you submitted a complete application, please, number one, yes or no. I applied for the California Relief Grant and submitted a complete application. Either yes, no, or I don't think so. And the second part is, were you approved? Were you notified by the state of California or by Lindustry that you were approved for this grant? So number one, simply yes or no, I applied for the California Relief Grant. Number two, I was approved, or I found out I was approved, or I have not heard yet. So I'll give you just another couple of seconds on this one to jump in. We have 44% of you that have already voted, and we will continue almost at 50. Boy. Okay, well, let's end it. Let's end it with 49% of you voting and share the poll. And our poll actually shows that 64% of you, yes, did apply. And of that total, 17% were funded, 52% were not funded, or as they say, waitlisted by Lindustry, and 17 or 29% of you have not heard back yet. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Some great information. And let's start moving on with what we have that's new to share this week. So first of all, vaccinations, all I'm going to say is right here, we'll send this out to you, a list of the Kern County vaccination sites near Bakersfield and also throughout Kern County. You'll see Delano, Tehachapi, even Ridgecrest on there. So a lot of the sites that are available, and we will get that to you. But let's talk about tiers, since we're going into the tiers aspect of that and get into the tiers part of this. So in doing my little new share here, which of course sometimes goes good and sometimes does not. Let's go up here and go into the blueprint of success here, and right on Kern County to begin with. So in Kern County, the new numbers came out yesterday. And what we saw that the adjusted rating was 18.5, which is probably, if you go up and down the San Joaquin Valley, like I had a tendency to do last night, looking at the map, it was pretty good numbers, 16.8 actual cases per day per 1,000. Adjusted, and our adjusted rate, again, for those of you that don't recall, is higher because we haven't had as many tests that have been done. And then the positivity rate, 8% as we move closer. These numbers suggest that we're probably a good, probably 3 weeks away. Would be optimistic, maybe 3 weeks of getting moved from the purple to the red tier and getting some indoor dining and a lot of other things that we could do with our businesses and moving toward potentially that orange, or as I like to call it, the mellow yellow color. So there's our current numbers. It was interesting that when we, looked at this from a statewide perspective, the state came out last night, and actually an article in the newspaper, the local Bakersfield Californian today, I didn't quite agree with, because I looked at it also and I came up with 8 different counties that might go from purple to red next week. Almost certain up here is going to be Lassen County. And then we're going to see some of the Sierra Foothill counties right in these ranges, with Calaveras and maybe even as far down south as Imperial County in the far right corner. So a lot of it's going to change, but it looks like a lot of the change is going to be coming from either the northern part of the state, and the author in the newspaper from the Associated Press thought it was going to be more of the Bay Area. But definitely Lassen and potentially Butte County, Sutter, Nevada, and some of the northern Sierra counties likely are going to be the ones that shift from purple to red. Now, the good thing is we're trending in the right direction, and we're moving toward getting into red, where we will have the substantial and actually have the opportunity then to actually open up our businesses more. So Imperial County, really kind of once you get south of Mariposa County there in the middle of the state in red, is likely, or at least in the next week or two, to go to that red state. So statewide, that's what's going on. Keep those numbers trending the right direction, need to move them, need to get the businesses open, need to get that cash flow improved. Some of the other things, since we're in the website right now on the line, let's look at the PPP numbers and a few things like that before we move on. And we have new PPP numbers, and those new numbers were through 2/21/21, which was Sunday. And so what we're seeing is the total number of loans approved originally, an amount of $660 billion. And then right now we're at $140 billion. Last week, we were at 125, so we've seen an addition of 15 billion. And this kind of had me wondering is if there was a huge delay, if there was a large delay in actually getting these actually approved. And we didn't see that in our poll. And a pretty good sample size on our poll that I feel fairly comfortable is reflecting in the national numbers. So nationally, we're at 140 billion. we can get into a little bit of the breakdown of that. And I think we're going to just jump into stay away from the states and the lenders. You know, California's going to be the highest, but let's just get into the industries that are going to actually be the top PPP for 2021. So these are the second help loans, the second draw of PPP, or the first draw that were initiated in 2021. And we're still at accommodations and food, accomplishing about 18% of that. And that's consistent where we've been the last 2 weeks or so. So we're still seeing a lot of relief coming to two very hard hit industries, the accommodations and also the food services. Recall that they are eligible for a larger percentage for 3.5 months and 2.5. We're looking at 18%, and then it jumps to 13% for construction. We would have thought that there might have been a little bit lower on the construction side, but the construction side is at 13. Additionally, we have professional, scientific, and technical at 11, and healthcare at 10, and then other services also at 10 of those that are actually being funded. So a little bit on our PPP numbers. Jumping over a little bit over here to the shuttered venue. We didn't have a chance to really get into this. I just want to look at a couple of the eligibility FAQs and really kind of focus on number one, because we are still waiting for further guidance on this. And until we get that, this is what we have to go off of. And there's a lot of questions that keep coming up on who's eligible. We will send this out like we did last week with our resources that come out in the bulk email, the recording and all the other resources that come out after today's webinar, that come up during today's webinar. And also we will look at this in much greater detail as soon as that portal gets open, the SBA portal, which we're hoping is going to be next week. So what is an eligible entity for the shuttered venue occupation? Venue grants, operator grants, and you'll see right there, there's a number of different ones that are listed, and it gets into, of course.
Kelly?
Yeah.
The only thing that we can see is the vaccine locations.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got to do a Zoom share. Thank you for letting me know that.
I will mute again.
And it's not. Thanks. So, a little glitch today, a little glitchy. Let me do a stop share and reshare that. So hopefully you saw the PPP numbers, which if you didn't, I apologize. And let's go back up into these numbers. And there we go. There's our shuttered venue occupational grant. And this is going to be the eligibility and also the eligibility entity. So you're seeing FAQ number one for what is, operators, museums, theaters, talent representatives. I've been getting a lot of questions about nonprofits that rent out venues, and I'm not really seeing, even though it is identified here as a venue operator, this is the additional guidance that I really need to see in order to really help you on that. So some of the things also, a little bit better information down here in number 12. A lot of FAQs for sure. And ironically, it comes on an air show, a great air show out at Ridgecrest every few years, but is an air show operator eligible? And what it does is it gives the nice definition after telling you no, but it requires an entity to either put on performing arts events at qualifying venues or sell advance tickets to those. So again, put on performing arts events at qualifying venues or sell advance tickets to performing arts at qualifying venues. So that, I think, provides a little bit more information, and we can get into this another time. So let's try now going back and get my share working right around here. Which obviously it doesn't want it. Okay, so coming back. And now we're back at the COVID. Okay, so here's our new PPP guidance. And so the new PPP guidance came out We talked about this. It came out on Monday. It's been pretty well identified. Mainly it's about today beginning a 14-day period that starts with only applications being accepted for employers with 20 employees or less. And this is going to go on for 2 weeks through today, starting today through 2 weeks from today. And the intent is to help sole proprietors, independent contractors, and self-employed receive more financial support. So, it's consistent with the bipartisan bill to try to get more money out to these smaller ones, the smaller businesses. The one thing we are seeing, though, is we are seeing the average size of a deal. Last year, it was $93,000, and so far through this year, it's 73,000. So 20, a lot smaller loans by the average size of the PPP deal. So some of the other rules and regulations that were announced is that another reason why they're doing this is to ensure non-citizen small business who are lawful US residents, but they have an I-10 number rather than an employer ID number, to promote transparency and to improve the emergency relief digital front door. Now, the emergency relief digital front door, you might recall, is enhancements that have been made to eliminate some of the fraud issues that were experienced in the last one. And so there was some waste, fraud, and abuse, 3 of my most disliked things on the planet. And so you'll see that with others, there's more fraud checks, there's more Treasury do not pay databases, and more public records that are being accessed. So that was what kind of prompted our poll question today. When I saw that and read, gee, if they're going through these extra items and these extra safeguards before they actually approve or disperse PPP second round, would it show up there? So they also want to continue to conduct extensive stakeholder outreach, get more people, and also current lending model. So those were our enhancements, our changes, again, for 2 weeks. The big one is for 2 weeks. Banks aren't allowed to submit, or lenders, anything over 20 employees or less. So just a quick recap of what the open stimulus programs are. You'll know that we have the second draw for those that received the first PPP that is open. Now it is for 20 employees or less. First draw, same requirement. We hope the open soon will be the shuttered grants. The employee retention tax credit remains very interesting. With the guidance that we got last week from the IRS that told taxpayers they can go back in Q4, and really encouraging you to potentially reach out to your payroll, your CPA, your financial advisor to see if that is a particular option for you. I've heard a few cases where I've heard some rather staggering numbers, but I haven't had a chance to go back and personally vet it myself to see that. Hopefully we can do that next week. The EIDL loan is open through the end of the year. The new EIDL grant is the program that is operated through SBA. You'll find out that if you're eligible through SBA, and then there's some more eligibility requirements. PPP forgiveness, you can file now. There's a new form. We have the tax deductions. And of course, the new one we added to the list this week is the City of Bakersfield Restart Program that we'll talk about momentarily. So action needed on the key stimulus. If you're wanting a PPP loan, you need to see the lender. The shuttered venues will be handled by the portal, an SBA portal that will be open soon, as an SBA portal as well for an EIDL loan. If you received an EIDL loan last year that's less than 150, you can go back and have it reconsidered to get an additional EIDL loan amount. PPP forgiveness, you have the opportunity to file. Remember, the filing deadline, though, is 10 months after your covered period. So there should be ample time and plenty of time for that. Your lender would probably prefer you wait till after March 31st when PPP second round closes. So also the tax deduction. And the action item we need to add to this is that the portal is going to be open for the Restart program. Again, these are going to require reduction from 2019 levels. And for PPP second draw, it's 25%. Shuttered venues is also going to be 25%. So you have to be able to demonstrate in a quarter, one of the 4 quarters, that you had 25% less income during the pandemic. The EIDL grant is for 30%, but it's over a shorter 8-week period, and the employer tax credit is 20%. So pretty much the shuttered venue policy, again, it's going to be staggered on the opening. So when it first opens, it's going to be only open to those 90% that have had a 90% or greater revenue loss. So that's going to be the first 2 weeks after the portal is opened. The employer tax retention tax credit last year, you recall, was not really in play. Talked about it very little. It's a significantly improved program and something that we will be talking about in the next couple of weeks. The guidance that we talked about last week is right there, as far as, and maybe we'll send that out again this week. But the interesting thing was it allowed you to go back and to go into the 4th quarter. And most of those were due earlier this month, but there is a process to where you can file an amended form and claim that tax credit for the 4th quarter. So since mostly, I think everybody had filed, I believe the due date for most people was around the 1st of February on that, the end of January. And the guidance came out after that. We haven't really got into that in great detail. There's your targeted EIDL grant that you will be notified from SBA if you're eligible and located in that low income territory or region. And the difference is going to be what you received in an EIDL advance last year. So $1,000 to $9,000, flip that, invert it, and that's what you would be eligible for if you get that. Really, there's the PPP, a lot of PPP cost, but let's bring in our special guest today. And first I'm going to introduce Randy. And Randy McKeegan is the finance director for the City of Bakersfield. He's been there since 2019. He's a proud local boy, attended local schools. And actually, look at that, he's doubled down. He's doubled down with a Bachelor in Science and Administration from CSUB. So he's a runner ×2 after earning his master's degree in public administration. Married 23 years. Randy, I will let you come in after Cecelia because that's ladies first around here. So Randy, you have been introduced, but now let's introduce Cecelia. She will kick off the presentation for the City of Bakersfield as their economic development principal planner. Been in Bakersfield, the city, worked for the city for 15 years. Principal planner, economic community development, great background. Look at all that information and background. City economic goals and so forth. And, oh gee, phone ringing in the background, who cares? So Cecelia, I did a very successful job of hacking your introduction. Please take it away.
Okay. That's okay, Kelly. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this program. Let me start sharing my screen. I'll just have a few slides just to share with everybody. So again, yeah, I'm Cecelia Griego with the City of Bakersfield under the city's new Economic and Community Development Department. And I'm here to talk about our Restart program. It's kind of going to come out in phases, and there is a program that launched today, but we will have another one that will launch on March 15th. So these are our partners we're working with on this program. There's Access Plus Capital, who will be running the grant and loan programs. And then we're also partnering with the Women's Business Center, who is operated by the Mission Community Services Corporation, who will be offering technical assistance. So let me go through the next slide. Oops. All right. So first I want to talk about the Microenterprise Restart Grant. This is a program that launched today. You can access applications by going to the Access Plus Capital website, where you can do your application online. You do have the ability to download and print if you prefer that, but they do recommend, the quickest part is just to fill out the online application. Just to go over some of the eligibility criteria for this, it is for for-profit businesses that are physically located in the city of Bakersfield. You must demonstrate that economic need and you have show those impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic. This first one, it really is focusing on those really small entities, 5 employees or less. The next program will be up to much larger entities, 25 employees or less. But this particular one, again, we're trying to reach those entities that haven't been eligible for PPE, where there is still struggling. So we're offering grants up to $3,500 for self-employed, and then up to $5,000 for entities that have 2 or 5 employees, up to 5 employees. These grants can be used for working capital and any number of business expenses, such as payroll costs, employee-related leave time costs, employee insurance, rent, inventory, supplies, materials, utilities, professional services, anything that impacts, the running of your business. This can help alleviate those. Again, this is targeting microenterprises where the owner, because this is a HUD-funded program, we're funding this through our community development block grant dollars. There is a targeted community that we're supposed to benefit from these funds. So, you must be a qualified low-income, moderate-income household, or you must be used to create or low income or moderate income jobs. And there is a chart which kind of shows that threshold, that when you work on your application, you'll know if you're in those ranges. Again, these grants, there's only one per business entity. You will not be eligible to apply if you have received previous disaster relief funding, such as PPE, Economic Injury Disaster Relief Loan, or BCARES program. This is meant to target it. Those have not been able to benefit from that. You must show no outstanding local, state, or federal liens or judgments. You must have no bankruptcies in the last 3 years. You must be able to demonstrate and certify that you've been operating at least a full year when you applied. And if you are awarded the grant, you will be required to sign a grant agreement and submit a W-9. So that's that program. Again, this is just the timeline. It launched today. Application process is about a week. And then that's what they'll be reviewing and selecting the awardees through after that. And then you'll be notified March 12th if you are a recipient of the grant, and then they'll get dispersed shortly after that. The next program is the loan to grant program. It kind of starts off as a loan, but then if you meet certain criteria, it converts to a grant and it will be forgiven. No more repayments after that. So it is scheduled to launch March 15th. Again, you will do an online application at the Access Plus Capital website. It is for for-profit businesses, 25 or fewer employees, physically located in Bakersfield. Your annual revenues must not exceed $2 million. The grant/loan amounts range between $5,000 to $50,000. It'll be calculated for around $2,500 for each employee that you're eligible to receive. Again, you must show that you've been heavily impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and you must support that with, showing us some sort of revenue loss. Again, the loan proceeds can be used for working capital and business-related expenses, same as the grants, payroll, employee-related expenses, insurance, rent, inventory, supplies, materials, utilities, professional services, just a pretty broad range. Because we know, you guys are impacted in various ways, so we definitely wanted to be able to provide flexible options you can use this funding for. Again, funds are limited, one per entity. You must have a current and valid City of Bakersfield business license. And again, demonstrate that you've been in operation at least a year. Initially, the loan payments will be just the first 12 months, interest rate of 3% at a fixed rate. There will be interest-only payments. And then after a year has gone by, they will be converted to forgivable and be converted essentially to a grant once you show that you're still in operation after 12 months. There are certain type of business entities who are not eligible for this funding: lending and mortgage, gambling, non-for-profit, adult entertainment, and period and religious establishments. Again, you must be an operating business, not a passive real estate entity. And you must have no outstanding state or federal or local liens. Again, this one you can still have received previous, unlike the Microenterprise grants. This one you can still have received PPE and other relief funding. You just have to show, even after, you just have to show that you've spent all that funding and that you're still impacted. So again, you still have an unmet need that shows that you still need assistance because you're still being impacted by COVID. So, and this grant just can't fund something. If you got something for PPE that you have to, again, you can use it again for this money, but you just have to show that your PPP or other relief funds has been expended and you still have a dire need for assistance. Again, applications will start being received on March 15th, and we expect to have it open through November or until the loans are fully deployed. Also, like I said, I mentioned we're also provided some funding to the Women's Business Center and Mission Community Services to offer technical assistance. They have a great program. They are offering all kinds of training courses, mentorship, disaster relief preparedness. They'll help with the loan and grant application process for this program. They also they offer consulting, educational workshops. They're really, a lot of ways they can help businesses that are being impacted by the pandemic. And this is their website that you can go and please take advantage of their resources. And that's it for me. And I'll pass this on to Randy.
Thank you very much, Cecelia.
Yeah, I'll
Go ahead and start sharing my screen. All right. I hope everyone can see that. Please give me some sort of sign if you don't. But so Cecelia talked about the programs that the city is offering going forward, but I've been given the opportunity to really talk about a program the city ran last year, really from September to December, called the B Cares program. In fact, she kind of touched on it earlier in her presentation. The B Cares program was a successful program in my view, and I'm glad we have the opportunity to really lay out the success of that program. That we were able to really provide assistance to small businesses throughout the community. So just a little background. Most of you probably know that the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Assistance Relief and Relief Plan Act, was actually approved by Congress in March of 2020. Included in that was the Corona Relief Fund. That was $150 billion set aside for local business, for local governments, state and local governments. So those funds were used to help mitigate what those governments were seeing throughout their communities. So in July, Bakersfield was notified that we were receiving $33.5 million of those CRF funds. So in August of 2020, the City Council approved a plan to spend those funds. Included in that was covering city costs, things like buying supplies, materials to help mitigate the negative effects of COVID, provide a safe working environment. And of course, the majority of that was for staff time, primarily public safety. We also had costs set aside for small business assistance, which BCARES fell under, and more rental and mortgage assistance was also covered. Here's a breakdown of that spending plan. As you see, the $33.5 million, 12.5 was set aside for direct city expenses. $10 million was set aside for small business grants and loans, $5 million for rental assistance, and you'll see the other breakdown there of the remaining programs that those funds were used for. So again, BCARES fell under that blue section of the $10 million. We actually set aside initially $3 million of the $10 million for this particular small business grant. So when we put this grant together, we really wanted to focus on what we were seeing as those businesses that weren't really getting a lot of potential assistance from programs like the Payroll Protection Program. So we focused on micro businesses. We talked about that earlier. Those were businesses, in our case, that had revenues of under $5 million a year. Those who had 25 or fewer full-time equivalent employees. And we were really focused on owner-operated businesses. What we saw in discussions with other municipalities was that those entities that were just one employee, one owner, I should say, they weren't really getting opportunities for funding with programs that were based on payroll expenses. So we wanted to be able to get those individuals included. So we built a program that provided grants based on full-time equivalents, as I said, including that in owner-operated business. So 1 to 5 employees would receive $5,000. And again, it topped out at $20,000 to those larger entities with 18 to 25 full-time equivalent employees. Going forward, so the program began taking applications on September 21st, 2020, and the application period ran through December 11th. We set up an online portal. It was really helpful. We had our IT department put together a portal that allowed for the application to be completed online and actually accepted confidential documents like tax returns and the like online as well. We hired a temporary employee, a full-time employee, worked over 8 hours in a lot of cases a day, a former business manager for the city who walked applications through the process, answered calls, answered emails, and really helped applicants get through the process. And we definitely did a lot of social media pushes, did interviews in the news to really get the word out of what this program was for, who qualified and who didn't. So it was built in 2 phases. Again, it started on September 21st, and for the first 3 to 4 weeks, about middle of October, we really focused on phase 1, those applicants who did not receive any COVID-related assistance, whether it be PPP or the county had a current recoveries program. So that first 3 to 4 weeks, we focused on those applications and funding those applications. And as we proceeded after the middle of October, we began to fund all applicants in what we called the phase 2 process. So here's the results of the BCARES program. This chart shows the progress of the applications received from September 21st through December 11th. It was 12 weeks. So you see we received over 1,500 applications during that period. It started off pretty strong, that week 1 and 210 applications. And those bumps you'll see in applications are really based on social media pushes and news releases to encourage applications. And as you see, that last week when we announced that the program would be ending, we had almost 1/3 of our applications come in that last week. A little bit problematic. We didn't expect that level, but we were able to slog through, get those applications reviewed and fund those applicants that did qualify. This next chart shows the the awards received. The orange line are the number of applications broken out by individual business categories, and the blue bar is the dollar amount awarded. So what you'll see here is that the highest dollar amount was awarded to restaurants and hotels. About 120 applicants received grants totaling $1.1 million. It says restaurants and hotels. It was primarily restaurants. I believe there were 3 hotels that actually received grants. The highest number of applicants receiving grants was this personal care and beauty group. Over 200 applicants received grants. These were beauticians, nail salons, estheticians, barbers, and the like. The third largest dollar amount went to medical entities, doctor's offices, dental offices. And the third most applications awarded was the retail market, where over 80 applicants received grants in the retail entity and retail market. And this next chart breaks out the award applications by the size. So you'll see the lion's share of the applications awarded were those small businesses, 1 to 5 employees. 779 of the 938 applicants who received awards were these small businesses, totaling close to $3.9 million. So just in summary, to close, we received, as I said, over 1,500 applications in a 12-week period. We're able to review all those applications and award close to $6 million to 938 applicants. As I said, we started out with $3 million. We saw the need, we saw some savings in other portions of our CARES program. So we actually were able to fund every single qualifying applicant who sent us an application by December 11th. There were 447 denials. The majority of those were applications for entities that did not have a location within the city. We had 135, I would say, applicants left on the table where they didn't give us all the necessary information in a timely manner, and so we weren't able to fund them. So overall, as I said, it was a successful program. We were able to put together this program in a matter of a few weeks, and completed in less than 5 months. Couldn't have been done without, obviously, the help of our code enforcement folks. They had to review all applications as well. Our technology services department had to put together the application process online and help us able to process any technical issues that came up. So I definitely want to thank both of those departments as well. And with that, that's all I have on this program. I think we're going to open it up, Kelly, for questions on both Cecelia and mine, and I think your presentation. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Randy, and thank you, Cecelia. Wow, that was great results from the BCARES program. Over 60% of those that actually applied were funded, and so many of those that weren't eligible because of their address, and they lived outside the city limits. That's great news. Okay, well, let's get to questions. So if you have any questions regarding the new city program or any of the PPP stuff or whatever, hit the Q&A box and let's get on with it. Okay, the first question is, we have received our second PPP loan. Because businesses slowed down significantly, we have placed some employees on part-time since we don't have sufficient work to keep them full-time. Can we continue to keep them on part-time until we get more business even after receiving the loan and still fall underneath the forgiveness guidelines? Well, that's a great question. And one of the issues is that it just depends on what the forgiveness process is going to be for the second loans. Last week or the week before, we went through a lot of the PPP forgiveness form, the new one that is automatic forgiveness up to 150. And at the top, you might recall there was a box to check if it was the first or second loan, which implied to me that they were going to use that same form for the second round of PPP forgiveness. You know, since your business is still in the purple zone and likely it has still been impacted, it would meet one of the criteria if they use the criteria for the first round of PPP forgiveness, that being the safe harbor that your business couldn't operate normally. So we're only seeing a small allocated number of businesses that are actually being tasked with having to go through the large planning and demonstrating that. So I would say it depends on if your loan is under 150 for one, and stay tuned when we hear more on PPP forgiveness, but you could only do what you can do, right? Let's see, next question. It's on the employer retention tax credit. Is there a deadline for filing to receive the tax credit for 2020? There's an overall deadline through June 30th, but I am not sure if there's an individual deadline for last quarters. I did not see it in reviewing the FAQ that the IRS put out. However, you know, it's possible. So we will be on that more. And also we will be sending out the the FAQ that had the 2020, and maybe potentially it will be in there. Okay, some people still haven't heard back from the Cal Grant program, the California Relief Grant. There's a question on how did Lindustry select the winners for the California Relief Grant program? Well, I did not have an answer for that. I just kind of went off of what I looked at, but last night, doing a little surfing, I found a Sacramento TV station, and they had a report on it, and they said that there was a focus toward women, minority, and high unemployment areas. I haven't been able to see that in print, but I did see that on video last night. So that's potentially what it could be. There is a question on which suggested that those would be priorities. I think if I were to guess, and I do guess, so I think what happened is that they tried to spread them across the state, but then they tried to earmark for some more underserved individuals, and those that we've identified as veteran-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, minority businesses, and rural businesses. So that's the best answer I have for that. Can you offer any advice how these PPP funds will be treated from a tax perspective? Well, it took all of last year to get the initial PPP funds actually to the state to where they were tax exempt for revenue, and you could use the tax deduction for the expenditures. So that took until the Economic Aid Act, which was passed on December 27th. I have not seen anything in the legislation or anything that makes it that way right now, makes it tax deductible for the expenses and not taxable as revenue. So if you just go by what's on the IRS code, then it would be, unless there's going to be a separate designation coming forward that actually exempts those funds. Okay, we applied for the second PPP loan on Monday. We are sole proprietors. Will we be under the old guidelines or new guidelines? So if you applied in 2021 for the very first time, you will be under the old guidelines. And there's been some changes with the Economic Aid Act. We've discussed this the last few weeks. Didn't get into it too much today, but it's under the old rules. Now, if you applied in 2021 for a second draw PPP loans, then what happens is that you would be under the new guidelines. Do you know if seasonal employers can change the covered period for PPP forgiveness? Okay, we chose the 12-week period for the loan, but the forgiveness period starts the day of the loan disbursement. One of those days, people. So most of the loan would not be forgiven. Well, Vivian, the way I interpret that is a little differently. The 12-week period is for the funding period to determine how much you would be eligible for the forgivable loan. But then all PPP loans have, at your election, a 24-week forgiveness window. So, and all of them made after June 5th of last year are 24 weeks. So you do have an election between 8 or 24 weeks, with the majority of individuals we see taking the 24 weeks, the full 24 weeks. So I think that's good news for you. The 24 weeks is what you would be able to use in that case. Okay, I am a woman-owned business and applied to Lindustry first and second round. Was put on the wait list, hoping it comes through. I do have a question just before. If I just received my first PPP, can I apply for the second before it ends? I'm almost half through the PPP money, just curious. You know, I think, and this is a new question, and this is This is something where we're still really kind of waiting on additional guidance on PPP. And there is more guidance out there that's coming, and this is one of those areas. What you're going to find is you're going to find that I believe that if you are able to actually use your first PPP and then be able to still get in and apply before the deadline, and if funds still exist by March 31st, then I believe it is okay to go after that second round. Now, you might need to do forgiveness in the process, but this is something that is really kind of is really guidance that we're going to have for sure. So there is a chance. I still think that that is the case, that if you end your first PPP, let's just say on March 10th, and let's say you're able to apply for forgiveness for that, and you might be able to get that second helping. There was nothing that included that, and there was actually some actual verbiage that said it was possible. Okay. So if we received a PPP loan in 2020, would the PPP loan for 2021 be considered a second draw? That is correct. So if you received a PPP in 2020, that was your first draw. The one in 2021 would be considered your second draw with the new rules then. Some people are just applying for the first draw in 2021 because they were either not eligible, maybe some of their paperwork was lacking, maybe they didn't have confidence in the full forgiveness of the program and couldn't assume any additional debt. So there's a lot of reasons why people would be going after the first one currently. So that is that reason. A couple more. Did you say that PPP1, if applied for and received in 2020, would follow last year's rules? Yes, PPP1 is under the 2020 rules with certain exceptions. Now, when forgiveness came out, the new forgiveness form up to 150, it came out with more expenditures that you can use, even though it was for your initial loan. So even though the form came out in, I believe, was it February, early February, maybe late January of 2021, the expenses that you might have already closed your covered period of last year could have been actually a little bit different. So it comes down to claiming expenses and other supplies, items that are now eligible for PPP2. For forgiveness, that actually, I believe, is true. So I think you can use those other expenditures. Okay, any more? Okay, let me hit the chat and make sure there's nothing in there. Some good clarification from John. You would need to file the amended 941 to claim the credit for 2020. Not sure. Okay, last question. What do you do if the lender miscalculated the loan amount for the second PPP award? Well, I can only tell you what we saw with the first PPP, and there were some miscalculations. I'm assuming their miscalculation was low, on the low side. What I would do is I'd contact the lender for that and see if they could do something to get that changed. Now, if that's if they gave you less money than you felt that you were entitled to. If you received more money and yours was larger, what we did see, and SBA did clarify this, saying that you would need to repay that amount back. You weren't able to seek for full forgiveness on that. It had to be the proper amount. So it depends on if you were low or if you are on the high side of that. So if it's low, I would contact your lender. If it's high, I would probably only spend up to the amount that you think is correct and contact your lender as well. Can someone apply for both city programs and receive fundings from both of them? Hey, Cecelia, I got one for you, you and Randy. So that is a good question. For both city programs, I assume you're meaning the CARES program, the CARES, BCARES, and also the new micro grant, because I don't think we talked about what you're doing next month yet.
I covered it a little bit, but yeah, for the micro grant, if you got BCARES or the other assistance, we're not allowing that because it is, it's a smaller amount. We're really trying to target those smaller entities that haven't been able to get assistance yet. But with the loan to grant program, which will start on the 15th, that is bigger. Whether you can use both the Microenterprise and the loan. I don't know if we've talked about that. My guess would be no. I think we're trying to target, one type of entity, but with the micro grant and then the loan program, I think you do probably best to just do one or the other. But I think, well, actually, with the way the loan's written, I think if you got the grant and you still have an unmet need, an impact that the loan would help for, I don't see why not. I think we just have to work with you case by case to kind of show that. So actually, yeah, I think you can potentially get both if you still show an impact from COVID that is not being met with the first micro grant.
Great.
I hope that answers your question.
Is there a minimum for the grant to loan program that's coming out next month?
Yeah, it's from 5,000 to 50,000. So yeah, minimum 5,000.
Got that one. Okay, great. We had one more sneak in here. We were going to get done on time for once in our lives. Maybe next year. Hey, do you have to apply for PPP forgiveness to apply for PPP2? And the answer is no, you do not. You do not have to apply or actually have received PPP forgiveness for your first loan from the SBA in order to apply for the second helping of PPP2. Okay, well, that's going to do it. I'd like to thank my guest and Randy and Cecelia, and great programs coming within the city of Bakersfield. Still have that huge need, as you can demonstrate and see today. Thank you so much, Cecelia. Appreciate everything that you and Randy do for the city and the program. And next time I'll even do a better job on your introduction, I promise.
That's
So,
okay.
it's really easy to silence a cell phone. A landline, it's not very easy, I find, anymore. So that's going to do it this week. We're going to be back next week with number 51. Our special guest is going to be Mr. Keith Bryce. And there's even a chance that we will be in the same room with our guest speaker for the first time since going back to April 1st, webinar number 3. So keep your fingers crossed that happens, and we'll be back for number 51 next week. Thank you all so much. Have a great week, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye now.